Hello grade 6 students and welcome to the social studies class. So today we're going to learn chapter 3 lesson 5, the first empires. Our vocabulary words for this lesson are conquer and means to take over, empire and means bringing vast lands and varied people under the control of a single government. Emperor means the leader of an empire. Standing army, it's a permanent army. Tribute, a required payment from one ruler to a more powerful ruler. And the final one is Code of Hammurabi, and it's the collection of laws that Hammurabi organized for the people of Babylon to follow. So the Akkadian Empire. The Sumerian city-states wanted the wealth that came from controlling land and water, and because of this they were often at war with one another. Eventually an enemy army did come to conquer the Sumerians. The leader of the army that attacked Sumerian city-states was Sargon. Sargon was not a Sumerian, but he had served in the army of the Sumerian king of Kush. And around 2350 BC, Sargon rebelled against the king and defeated him. Then he marched his army across Mesopotamia, conquering one Sumerian city-state at a time. And in doing so, he created the world's first empire, bringing vast lands and varied people under his control. And Sargon set up his capital at the city of Akkad in central Mesopotamia. And for 55 years, Sargon ruled as an emperor of what became known as the Akkadian Empire. Sargon used force and organized government to maintain control over his empire. He was one of the most rulers to keep a standing army and permanent army of paid soldiers. And Sargon chose officials who he knew would remain faithful and appointed loyal nobles as governors to control conquered cities. And each governor provided Sargon with a tribute collected from the conquered people. A tribute is a required payment from one ruler to a more powerful ruler. The Akkadian Empire lasted for more than 200 years after Sargon's death, and in about 2300 BC, the empire stretched from what is now Iran to the Mediterranean Sea. It eventually fell and Sumer city-state once again became independent. So Hammurabi and the Babylonian Empire. Between 1790 BC and 1750 BC, Hammurabi, the king of the city-state of Babylon, conquered and united most of Mesopotamia under his rule. In this way, he formed a large empire that became known as the Babylonian Empire. And as an emperor, Hammurabi both encouraged trade and oversaw agriculture, irrigation, and building projects. In addition, he changed the tax system so that all people in the empire paid a fair share. Hammurabi is perhaps best remembered for organizing the laws of his land, and each city-state has its own laws. Hammurabi collected all these laws, sorted them, and came up with one collection of laws known as the Code of Hammurabi. The Code of Hammurabi consisted of 282 laws. They covered such matters as family relationships, taxes, land and business deals, trade, loans, debts, wages, and crime. Hammurabi changed the old laws that were unfair and made clear those that they were confusing. He had the code carved into stone and placed in a public place for everyone to see. Kassite and the Assyrian Rule. After the fall of the Babylonian Empire, several different groups invaded and ruled Mesopotamia. And in the 1600 BC, the Hittites, armed with war chariots and iron weapons, captured the looted Babylon. The Hittites soon returned to their homeland, and their neighbors, the Kassites, moved in and conquered Babylon. They ruled the city for more than 500 years. The Kassites adopted Babylonian laws, religion, and literature, and helped Babylonian culture live on. In time, the Assyrian Empire gained control of the region. The Assyrian had a great desire to control the trade routes in southwestern Asia. Their mastery over powerful weapons helped them to meet their goals. From the Hittites, they had learned how to make and use iron weapons and war chariots, and the Assyrian army introduced the battering ram and a heavy wooden beam used to break down walls. They were also among the first to use the lance as spear attached to a long handle. One by one, the Assyrians conquered their neighbors, and by the 700 BC, the Assyrian ruled the largest empire in the world. They controlled all of the Mesopotamia as well as the lands in the present day of Turkey, Egypt, and the Arabian Gulf. The Assyrians were great innovators. The Assyrian kings united their huge empire by building the world's first system of paved roads and developing a postal system. The Assyrians were the first to make locks that opened with keys. In this map you can see the Babylonian and the Assyrian empires as well. And they also invented the magnifying glass and built the first libraries. And in 609 BC the Assyrian fell to its enemies and the new Babylonian Empire rose in its place. One of this empire's best-known ruler was Nebuchadnezzar, and he is believed to have built the tourist garden known as the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. This garden is remembered as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. This is the end of our lesson, and thank you so much for listening.